Hello. So I see we have 12 people in the room right now. So if you can hear me, go ahead and type in the chat, say a little hi, make sure our sound is working. Tyson, Janice, if you guys want to make sure your sound is going well.
Okay, I'll check mine too.
Yep. Let me know if you can hear me, if you can't hear me.
Hey, Michael. Right on.
You can hear everybody, Michael? Okay.
Awesome. So as people join in, we can do a little bit of an icebreaker. So hopefully you have a window nearby you. If not, imagine what it's like maybe outside of the room you're in, and let us know across the country. What's outside your window? What's the weather like today? Give us some details. What are you seeing?
Snow.
Snow. I have
Taylor,
sunshine.
where are you?
Cold Lake seems appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
We got snow a little bit yesterday in Kingston, but nothing that stayed. So thank goodness.
There's been flurries dancing around this morning.
Yeah.
Just cold.
Regina, Petawawa had some snow.
But now it's sunny and gorgeous. Well, that's the same here in Kingston.
Yeah. Michael, nice. Are you working on a garden? Sunny. Oh, nice. 10 plus.
10 plus tomorrow. I don't think we're that lucky.
No.
Diane, are you in Winnipeg? Yeah. Wow, there we go. We're jealous of Winnipeg's weather.
It's going to snow all afternoon here.
Yeah, oh man.
Tomorrow?
Here, right now.
Oh.
That's what my phone says.
Hey, Chantel. Garden and a backyard reno. Cool.
Rachel, you were just glitching a little bit there.
Oh my god. Okay, well, I'll try and talk slower throughout the presentation, hopefully. Getting excited about Michael's garden. I love gardens.
I will say I had some connection issues earlier today. They seem to be really good right now, but if I disappear momentarily, I will be back.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Like Rachel too. I just lost Rachel's video.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hopefully we can hang on for the full hour without too many technical difficulties. Knock on the desk.
Minus 14 on Tuesday. Oh, it's depressing.
Crazy. Oof. Awesome.
55, I'll assume that's Fahrenheit.
Yeah. Fahrenheit, yes. You're not in the desert on the West Coast.
Hey, Krista, how's it going? We're doing what's outside your window. Getting the details from the weather across the country. So if you've just joined in, go ahead, let us know if you can hear us. Let us know what's outside your window. And we'll get started in like 30 seconds. We had 29 people register. We have about 24 in the room right now. The virtual room. Nice. At least we got Sun and Wainwright. Cool. Squirrels in the playhouse. That's awesome.
Nice.
Hey, Ben. All right, right on. We're at 1 o'clock, so people can join us as they remember about the webinar at 1. They might join us a couple minutes in, but we'll get started and stay right on track. So my name is Rachel Askett, and I am a health promotion specialist here in Kingston. So that's where we're coming to you from today. And with me today, we have Janice Keown, who's a fitness instructor right in the middle there.
Hi, everybody.
Kingston. And Tyson Staples, our reconditioning manager here in Kingston as well. So we
Hello,
got a
everyone.
pretty sweet PSP team here, and this is what makes the injury reduction program so special here in Kingston as well. These partnerships are really something that adds value to the program, and when we have this in our regular setup, we definitely have that practical component. So we can't do the full practical component today, but still adding a little bit of a taste of what that partnership is like here in Kingston. So thank you everyone for joining us. And as with all the other programs that you have potentially been viewing on webinars over the past few weeks, they are created, the content is created through Strengthening the Forces, Directorate Force Health Protection, and it's under the pillar of active living and injury prevention. So this is the one program, Injury Reduction Strategies, that's under that pillar. And it is delivered then by PSP staff on every base across Canada. That delivery is a little bit different depending on the base you're in, so check with your local HP office to see how that's offered. Oh, awesome. Yeah. So definitely good to have these partners on, especially when we have questions like, trying to rehab certain injuries. So we'll get to that for sure, Michael. Before we get started, the presentation is the intellectual property of the Department of National Defense. So any recording or anything like that is prohibited. However, the webinar will be provided at a later date, so you can review it, or if someone you know missed it and you think it'd be valuable for them, you can send them the link later on. Some of the topics in the webinar may be sensitive in nature. The content is developed for adults specifically. So if there are kiddos around, we just ask for parental discretion. And anything that's shared in the chat, or if someone would like me to turn their mic or their camera on, I can do that. But anything we share is only to be discussed in the webinar. So not to be discussed outside of the webinar, just a little bit of confidentiality and respect for everyone in the virtual room today. So again, it will be recorded, this webinar, and will be available later on. We don't have to date for that. .ca. And to participate actively in the presentation, there will be opportunities for that. So both in the chat and the polls on your right-hand side, you should be able to engage as much as possible in this virtual webinar. Any questions, you can go ahead and put in the chat, but we will get started. So the first poll today, I just want to see who is in the room with us and how you would describe yourself. So I will share that right now. So you'll see that pop up in your right-hand screen. So are you a military member, family member, veteran, or civilian staff? I'll give you a second to provide your answer. Awesome. Cool. So it looks like we've got majority of military members, some civilian staff, and a couple family members and veterans as well. So a little bit of everybody, which is great. And it's good to know just for the information that we'll be getting into specifically throughout the rest of the hour. And get to the next slide here. So skipped ahead too far once. So the agenda today, this is what we're going to look at. First off, we'll check out what the injuries are like in the calf, what types of injuries exist, little definitions and stats there. We'll talk about mobility and stability, things that do work in preventing injury, as well as things that don't necessarily work, exercise selection, running strategies, and then we'll have a 5-minute question period at the end as well. So feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation, but if we miss anything, just reshare that at the end during that 5-minute question period. So in the chat, I'm just curious, what is your favorite way to stay active? So we all have those things we kind of default to. Diane likes walking and biking. Tracy's a runner. Taylor spin, cool. Yeah, lots of running, team sports. Oh, rock climbing.
Nice.
Oh, amazing. Lots of weight training in there. I know, swimming. I miss swimming right now. Cool. Walking, biking. Awesome. We've got lots and lots of different answers there. Oh, swimming too. Yep, for sure. So a lot of these activities, maybe are being impacted with the different setup that we're in right now, whether we can participate in them or not, or maybe we're participating in them a little bit differently. But it's always good to just reflect on what are those exercises that make us happy. So when we're thinking about adding exercise to our fitness schedule, that's always a good place to start. Yeah, we all have a few favorites, Chantel. Nice. So reflecting on those activities, back into the poll, would you say that you have increased, maintained, or decreased your activity over the past few weeks? So specifically, these past few weeks as many people's situations have changed. Another 24 answers, a couple more. Okay, so most people have actually decreased. So 14 people, their activity has decreased over the past few weeks. 8 have increased and about 6 maintained. So really interesting to see how current situation, changes our activity levels, and then how that could potentially impact our risk for injury in the future as well. Yeah, and we're all experiencing changes, so sometimes that decrease is definitely sad, Chantel, but hopefully we'll have some good strategies to maintain activity and prevent injury. So over the past 12 months, have you injured yourself seriously enough to limit your normal activity? Just a yes or no poll. So over the past 12 months. Yeah, okay. So 54% say yes. We've got 46% that say no. So just over half. Of those people, yes, I'm going to send out one more. How was that injury? Right, so was that battle-related activity, military-related, sports physical training, military physical testing, or other? Okay, so lots of sport and physical training so far. Great, yeah, so actually 56% of those that have been injured in the past, it's related to sport and physical training. Now, I'm always very surprised doing this in class and even here today with our smaller sample size, but it always seems to slightly represent, what we see in a larger scale when we survey the CAF in general. So this HLIS, or Health and Lifestyle Information Survey, was completed in 2013 and 2014. It's done about every 4 years. And they've seen similar numbers. So the polling group, or the group that was surveyed, was regular force members. Roughly 4,000 of them were provided answers. And so 41.9% of people sustained an injury over the past 12 months to limit their normal activities. So quite similar to what we saw today, almost half. We had a bit more than half in our group. And then of those that were injured, they cited that as the reason that they were unable to deploy in the previous 2 years. So thinking about not only the personal implications of injury and just not being able to do our normal activities, but also that relation to career impact when it comes to CAF members. Those injuries start to break down into a couple different categories. So you may have experienced one or the other of these injuries. It could have been acute, right? So that's when you know something has happened right away. There's a point that you can pick out and you know you were injured, like you tripped and fell and twisted your ankle. That would be acute. RSIs repetitive strain injuries is when you're like, oh, I don't know what I did, but my back is sore, right? I don't know what I did, but my knee is bothering me. So things that happen over time start to cause injury. Just getting a message, we can't see you or Tyson.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I can see all three of us up at the top.
Same.
Me too. So is everyone having, oh, Chantel can see all of you. I can see everyone. So it might just be in your settings to decrease or increase the amount of cameras you can see. All right. Thanks for letting us know, though. Great to know you can see all three, the rest of you. Awesome. So
Oh, Kyle can't see Tyson.
That's not missing much.
oh, that's okay. Yeah, that's fine. So back to the injuries here. So it could have been acute, right? You can pick out that point when you were injured, or repetitive strain injury has happened over time. You can't really think of that time when you were injured. Most of these injuries are happening during sports and physical training, just like we saw in our mini sample. 20.5 or 10.8% in military training. The next is office work or other duties. We see about 8.5% and 12.4 RSI. The format here has shifted our text a little bit, but it is 7% and 6.1% for military physical testing. Also leisure activities, 4.1, 3.1. Unpaid work, 3.8% and 2.5%. And then finally at the bottom there, we have battle-related injuries is less than 2% for acute injuries and 2.4% on our repetitive strain injuries. So just a quick breakdown of where we're seeing the injuries happen, and that gives us the information into where we can best prevent injury as well. So we definitely see sports and physical training being that area of focus where we can really prevent the majority of the injuries that are happening. So overall, the issues that we see in the calves, that injury rates are high, right? So 41.9 and 44.9%. Chantel, yeah, we can go back to repetitive strain injury. Tyson, did you want to give an example of what that could be or what you've seen?
Anything that doesn't have a real event associated with it, like you sort of mentioned. So that would be the achy knees, the sore, creaky shoulder, like you said, the achy back that didn't really happen as a result of an event, such as picking up something heavy and then you feeling something pull or pop in the back. That would be the example of the acute. Well, anything that's not acute would more likely fall under the repetitive strain and are generally more common.
Does that help, Chantel? Perfect.
No problem.
Thanks for the clarification. So when we think of these injuries, again, we noted that not only would it prevent you from your normal daily activities, maybe playing with your kids, doing housework, going out and doing errands, but it could also impact career goals, right? So injuries cause CAF personnel unnecessary stress as well as the injury itself, right? So thinking deeper into what an injury might mean for a CAF member. CAF leadership, we do want to provide better injury prevention support to CAF personnel. So using this time to be creative and try to identify those places and pieces where we can start to prevent injury better and provide that education. Because we know that scientific evidence does provide clear direction for injury prevention, especially when it comes to physical training and sports, where the majority of injuries happen. So we can take all this new information and apply it within the CAF with the support of partners, good relationships between providing education and actually applying it as well. So we'll dive deeper into this during the webinar. Out of all of those stats, I wanted to conclude the introduction with this stat in particular, because this is the most important one. What percentage of injuries are preventable? That should be live in your polls now. Is it 10 to 15%, 80 to 95, 60 to 65, or 0%? What percentage of injuries are preventable? So we've got a couple more answers to come in. But it looks like we have a clear winner with the majority saying 80 to 95%. We have 18 people there. 7 people say 60 to 65 is a close second. And then one answer of 10 to 15%. So this is a good news story. 80 to 95% of injuries are preventable. So if we're thinking about ourselves as leaders, whether we're a family member, PSP staff, HP staff, a CAF member, regular force reserve, finding that ability or that way we can be a leader in preventing injury, we all have that opportunity. And keeping this stat in our mind as motivation, that 80 to 95% are preventable, can keep us working towards being more creative in our prevention strategies. So with that, are there any questions with the introduction? Everyone good? So I'll let Tyson lead into now. What are those injury predictors, and how do we know how to prevent our injury, where it really comes from?
Yeah, so when we are looking at preventing injury, knowing where injuries come from is a big step in doing that. So we look at 4 general areas, and just as a reminder, just that in the reconditioning program, we work with the members who have been injured and then go to a physiotherapist, and then once they've been through their physiotherapy or most of the way through physiotherapy, then get referred back into the reconditioning program. So this is what we're seeing when we get them from therapists. So we have, obviously you want to look out at previous injuries. If you've been hurt in a joint, like if you've injured a knee at one point in time in your life, you are more susceptible to re-injuring that in the future. Just as an example, asymmetries, that's when we're looking at differences between left and right sides, which can be sort of developed through overuse of one limb or one side, or a pre-existing ailment of some sort as well can also affect that. Pain that happens during exercise is a real big predictor, and one that we should very much pay attention to. So exercise shouldn't hurt, and if it does, make sure you're questioning that. And then in the red at the bottom, dysfunctional movement patterns are a big one, because we can educate people on the proper movement patterns to do and execute exercise more safely.
Awesome.
Okay, so when we look at some of those symptoms that you're becoming more aware of now, you want to make sure that if you're doing exercise and it is bothering you, that you want to reduce your training intensity until it becomes mild, or no symptoms whatsoever would be much more ideal. But being injured does not mean you have to stop training necessarily, okay? And that's another piece where the reconditioning program can help quite a bit, because we can give you modifications to your existing programming, in keeping in mind that we can still plan this and still move you towards your goal. So an injury does not mean you have to stop. It just means you may have to change things up a little bit. But most importantly, just make sure that we're not ignoring small injuries, because they can become a much bigger problem down the road. So make sure, if you do notice something, consult one of the professionals that we have access to, because early intervention is what we really want to get in there, because it's way easier to fix a minor problem than a major one. Okay, so when we look at some of the other, this is more from our dysfunctional movement patterns. If you remember that from a couple of slides ago, we have a pyramid of control. Now, in the bigger presentation, we actually do spend a little bit of time right at the very bottom piece when we talk about alignment, and that's more just a general reference. We're talking about your posture, how your body is naturally in alignment, both in a standing and seated position, and then make sure that you can carry over that alignment and that proper alignment into the exercise that you do. So much like I think most people can understand what good standing up posture means, your shoulders down, head back, chin tucked, all that sort of thing. But when we translate that into a movement scenario, sometimes that part gets forgotten, and we forget to maintain, or have learned how not to fall out of that position, I guess is another way of looking at it, and not maintain those proper alignments. So once knowing that alignment is sort of the base of all injury prevention, making sure that everything's in the right spot, we need the mobility and the stability piece, which is the next two steps up that pyramid, in order to maintain. Okay, and generally we would equate mobility and stability. It's kind of a chicken and egg thing. You need stability to have mobility, and you need mobility to create stability. So it's sort of neither is more important than the other. So we just want to make sure that we really focus on those two areas in your training program. And depending on where you're at, you may need to prioritize that, or you may need to just have it sort of on a maintenance phase. And that's where working with a qualified exercise professional can help determine where you are on that spectrum. Once we move past that mobility and stability piece, we can start moving into the functional movement patterns, your squat pattern, your lifting pattern, your push-pull pattern, and the walking pattern, or walking running pattern locomotion, which Janice will get into a little bit later on. But we want to build those patterns into a part of our regular routine. And from there, then we can start working on strength and eventually the power, which is just your ability to express that strength with more speed and efficiency. Okay, good. So this slide here, it skips into looking at a series of points along the body, and we'll look at the left skeleton first, and we're going to start at the top, and we can see that there's different parts of your body. We have your thoracic spine, which is the part of your spine where your ribs attach to. Then we move into the piece below, which is lumbar spine. And then below the lumbar spine, we get into your hips. The next joint below your hips is the knee, and the final joint on the way down to the bottom is your ankle. And you can see that those are alternating patterns of one area is designed for mobility and the other area is designed for stability. So that's sort of the way that the body's been very smartly put together. And if we look now to the right, the skeleton on the right, what this is trying to explain is that when you lose thoracic mobility, if we look at that top little box there, it's going to send problems up and downstream. So above the thoracic spine is your cervical spine, and below is your lumbar spine. So you're looking at pain up in your neck and shoulder region, or in your lower back if you lose that thoracic mobility. Next step down is your hips. If you lose mobility in your hips, you're predisposing yourself to problems in your lower back and your knees. So again, above and below that point of contact. And then we go down to the final one. This one's just a little bit different because there's no joints below the ankle. But if you lose ankle mobility, you do have a lot of problems with knees. So and this is definitely what we see. So what this means is from my point of view, is when someone comes in experiencing low back pain, for example, I don't usually look at lower back. I look to see what's going on in the hips, and I look to see what's going on in the thoracic spine. And a lot of times there's deficiencies there, and we address those, and then we create the corrections, and magically the lower back pain disappears. So just an example of how we use the information that's out there to prevent bigger injuries from happening.
I love it when you go through that, Tasia. It just makes it really clear too how engaging with those professionals early on in your injury is so key in trying to figure out the puzzle that every unique injury is too. Good.
Did anyone? I guess we're going to have some chance at the end of this to discuss questions, anyways. Is that right? Okay, yeah. Perfect. So, so here are a list of things that don't prevent injuries, and I know that a lot of people have heard things like static stretching and holding one position, and you might do that before you go for a run. But everything on this list here have actually, although they're popular and although they make some people a lot of money, they don't necessarily or haven't been proven to conclusively help in the prevention of injury, and those are static stretching, orthotics, running shoes, even when they are specially or custom made for someone, and lumbar support, so the pads and stuff that you would put on a chair for your desk, or some of them are in your car, those sorts of things. And the same goes for braces. That would include back belts and weightlifting belts and those sorts of things. Okay, so that's what we're talking about with those things there. What does, however, has been shown time and time again, is modifying your training, and that is the single thing that can make a massive change in how your body deals with an injury, and how you can prevent an injury from recurring or other ones from happening in the first place. So that's why we certainly want to modify the way that exercise is handled, and done maybe a little more intelligently with the scientific backing. Okay, so when we're doing looking at minimizing the risk of injury, some of the easy things that you can do is, obviously, we're going to take out things that hurt. Okay, and or at the very least, we're going to find out why they hurt and see if we can make them not hurt. Adjust your daily routines, adjust your daily habits. That could be very simple things, like a very common one is people with sore knees and sore backs. Pay attention to the way you're standing when you're preparing meals. Just like little things like that if you stand and you shift all your weight to one side, well, that's creating a curve in your back, and you're overloading that one side. So that sort of skips a couple points down where you're addressing asymmetries. Well, those postures create asymmetries, right? So if you're mindful of your posture, mindful of that alignment piece that we talked about at the very on that pyramid slide, then you can prevent your body from having these asymmetries that lead to injuries down the road. Maintain fundamental mobility. That's basically to really simplify that concept. Is just making sure that all your joints move the way they are supposed to move. Okay, so are you able to get into a full squat position? Or are you able to raise your arms all the way above your head, or are you one of the these reachers when you go to reach something up above your head? Being able to maintain that mobility and making that a goal is a really important one, because it's a whole lot easier to maintain than it is to get it back when it's gone. Okay, and then maintain fundamental stability. So again, we have that mobility and stability piece working together. That's sort of just making sure that we're doing the right things to stabilize the joints that are supposed to be stabilized, and then again mobilize the ones that are supposed to be nice and mobile. Address asymmetries, I sort of touched on that. And then the big one is exercise selection and choosing exercises that are better suited towards your goals. So these are some of the things that we talk a little bit about in our practical piece, and this comes from a lot of the work of Dr. Stu McGill out of the University of Waterloo. But we have a series of exercises. I think there's 8 that are showing down there, divided into 4 different columns of stability. Okay, so if we take a look at what goes on in your body, we have and we'll address more so at the lower back region, just because it is such a common area. But we have anti-extension exercises. So those are exercises that prevent the body from falling into an extension. Okay, so when you think about how your hips will sag towards the ground if you're doing a plank, the strength to hold that position is an anti-extension exercise. Okay, same thing with the next column over. We have that anti-flexion, lifting your hips up or preventing the hips from sagging. That would be the anti-flexion. Okay, so moving one more column over to the right, we're into anti-lateral flexion. Now we're looking at a side plank, and that ability to hold the hips up and not let the hips sag down towards the side here. That would be your anti-lateral flexion. And then your last piece, sometimes a little hard to see in a still, but imagine yourself in a push-up position, or if you have the ability, hop onto the floor into a push-up position and see what happens to your hips when you lift the one hand off the ground and try to touch your opposite shoulder. There's going to be a lot of rotation that takes place, and that is your anti-rotation exercise. So we will include these types of things to really build that midline stability. And again, we would customize that towards where you're currently at. If you're already very strong at anti-rotation, we wouldn't prioritize that, right? Or if you can hold a front plank for 3 minutes with really good form, we're not going to prioritize that one. We're going to figure out what's going to be best for you. And perhaps that best for you might be just a more advanced level exercise, which is what you see down in that bottom row. So those farmer carries, the double front kettlebell carry, the suitcase carry, and the supine Palloff press, those are just advancements to the little picture that's above them. Okay, they're training the same exercise pattern, which is the anti-extension, the ones that you see through the yellow row. Those are the patterns that we're trying to train, and then each column is showing the exercises that you can select. And there are several advancements that you can even make from there. These are just 2 very early level exercises that we can incorporate, early level exercise groups that we can bring in.
Awesome. Thanks, Tyson. I don't know. I hope I'm not the only one, but I just started sitting up a little bit straighter as I was listening to it. Alignment and posture. And if you're in the same boat, say, put a little hand up in the chat, because I'm definitely sitting up straighter after that. Moving into, Taylor's with me, Diane. Nice. See, we're already preventing injuries. That's amazing. And again, the benefit of being in a virtual webinar when your camera's not on is you can move around all you want. So if you feel the need to move, this is definitely a good reminder in the middle of the webinar at half an hour in. So I'd also like to ask you to share in the chat, what do you think the most common activity leading to injury in the calf is? So we know it happens during sports and physical activity most often, but what is the activity? Maxime, running. Michael's heard it was weightlifting, ruck marching, Kyle, ruck. Yeah, lots of rucking in there. Soccer. Awesome, lots of good guesses. Sports, running, PT. Awesome. So it is running and jogging, right? So that could happen in a variety of those sports as well. But this comes up, happy is saying there too, right? So maybe ruck running. And other activities responsible for many serious injuries are things like weight training, ice hockey, and rucksack marching, like we had mentioned a couple of those in the chat as well. So Janice is going to lead us through how we can prevent injury when it comes to running and jogging specifically, as that is the activity that injuries happen the most in.
All right. So as we just saw, over the past 15 years, the highest burden in the calf for injuries has been running. So where do these injuries tend to stem from? So more than 80% of those injuries are from people doing too much too soon. Rachel had asked you earlier with a little poll, who has maintained their fitness since this whole COVID-19 lockdown has been on, who has increased, who has decreased. For those of you that have increased your fitness or just doing more than you used to be, have you been progressing slowly, or have you just kind of been going for it? That would be an example of a little bit too much too soon if it's something that you're not used to doing. And Tyson touched on this next point a little bit earlier as well with those orthotic shoe inserts. There is not enough scientific evidence out there to say that those shoe inserts can help with improving poor running mechanics or techniques for proper progression. So we must focus first on fixing those mechanics and those techniques in order to have success and to prevent those injuries. We can go to the next slide.
Okay, perfect.
So how do we adopt those good running techniques so that we are preventing injury? Number one, you're going to progress slowly in terms of your duration, your frequency, and your intensity. So how long you're going to be running for, how often you're running for, and how hard you're going to be running. People who are not accustomed to running regularly have to be very careful how they introduce or even reintroduce for those who are maybe coming back from injury and starting to run again. So you want to make sure that you're not doing too much too soon, as the body has a limited capability of absorbing those added impacts. And if you have too much impact on the body, it's going to start to break down. So you want to make sure that you're progressing slowly. And ideally, you're only going to increase one of those factors at a time. So if you're increasing the duration of your runs, make sure that you're not also increasing how many times per week you're running or how hard you're running, which would be increasing your speed, I guess, during those running sessions as well. So just make sure that you focus on one of those at a time. So and also make sure that if you are going to be doing other weight-bearing activities, for example, weightlifting or rucksack marching, that you're not also increasing the duration or frequency or intensity of your running on that same particular day. It just it's too much for the body to handle at one time. So if you're going to change your running technique as well, this one says an example of barefoot running, but I'm not sure I would really recommend barefoot running. Make sure that you are doing that progressively as well. These guidelines will apply to seasoned runners and new runners as well. Make sure that you're progressing slowly in order to prevent any kind of injuries. All right, so running strategies. How do we adapt in military PT settings where group runs are common? We want to make sure that we are doing a warm-up. So make sure you're doing some light jogging, fast walking, dynamic movements, a proper runner's warm-up, I guess you'd say, some hip circles, some ankle mobility exercises, doing that before you actually start to run. If you are doing group PT, unit PT runs, make sure that you are grouping up with your fellow CF members of similar abilities. It has been proven that the injuries from running decreased by 30% in group runs if you're running with somebody who's at similar ability as you and not trying, not trying to keep up with the faster runners or the ones who are more accustomed to running. And limit those unit runs to once a month, 30 minutes maximum, so that you're not pushing too hard. And one of the big things as well, avoid endurance running in combat boots, with a rucksack and with bloused pants. And why do you think that is? Well, biggest thing would be that your body's not used to doing endurance runs in those kinds of situations. Even as soldiers, they're not going to be running 10K with a rucksack on their rucksack on their back during battle. They're just going to be doing it in short sprints and whatnot. So doing endurance running with combat boots or a rucksack is not very good for your body. So avoid those as well. So we'll move on to some programming strategies, examples for increasing your running. So we're going to start, as you can see in the chart, for those who have not run before, beginners or ones that are coming back from injury, you want to be starting slow with a 1-to-1 walk to run ratio. So for example, you're starting with 1 minute of walking, 1 minute of jogging. You're going to progress that every 2 to 4 weeks, adding a minute onto your run or adding another 1 to your ratio for that walk to run. So after a couple weeks, you would be walking for 1 minute, running for 2 minutes. Maintain that for a couple weeks and then adding on another minute each time until you are eventually progressing to a 1 minute walk, 5 to 10 minute jog or run, up to a maximum of 30 minutes to start. So a seasoned runner would be somebody who can comfortably run for 30 minutes without causing any pain or injury. Any questions on that so far? Are we good? Okay, so now we move into how to run properly. So in order for the body to move more efficiently, as Tyson mentioned earlier, alignment is a big thing. It's right at the bottom of that pyramid. So when proper running form comes into effect, you want to make sure that you have nice compact arms, so they're in close to the body, moving forward and backward. We're not swinging our arms and expending too much energy. You want to have a balanced forward posture with your feet falling under the body center of mass, good symmetry and low distribution from side to side of the body. Low ground contact time. So that's that low impact, quiet steps. And a proper foot strike, making sure that you are landing on that midfoot to the forefoot as opposed to heel first and then rolling through to the toe. More efficient landing midfoot. You're going to keep that alignment, as you can see in those pictures. You want to have your alignment so you're coming straight down from the body instead of reaching out with that foot. So landing in the midfoot area, quickly rolling your foot forward onto the ball of the foot or toes and springing off the ground. You shouldn't be thumping on that ground every time that you come through. Think of like a cat and how a cat lands softly on the ground and you're not thumping along like an elephant. Your knees and your legs are going to be fairly low to create an efficient stride. And try not to lift your knees up too high because that requires a lot of energy. And it's not going to allow you to transfer that to power and speed as you start to pick up your speed as you progress through your runs. Keeping those knees slightly bent to absorb the impact when you hit the ground and avoiding those long strides, as I mentioned earlier. Make sure that your feet are landing underneath your body. If your lower leg is extending out in front of the body, your strides are going to be too long. So you want to make sure that you keep your knee low and foot is landing right underneath the body. Awesome. That nice tall posture.
Yeah, Janice put together a great handout too of proper running form. So I'm just going to share that now in the resources. So if this is something that relates to you in particular, you can go ahead and download that as well. We'll move on to the next slide.
All right.
So any questions on running in particular there after we finish that little section up? Hopefully that handout is helpful. So as we wrap up before we move into the full question, I just want to brainstorm on some strategies for action, right? So we've just briefly talked about, where injuries are coming from, getting a better idea of how that pyramid works and how our mobile and stable joints alternate throughout the body. We've talked more about running, the stats on injuries in the calf. Specifically, what we want you to remember leaving this webinar is that 80 to 95% of all injuries are preventable, right? So that's our motivational piece, the thing that keeps us working to find more creative strategies to prevent injury for calf members. Again, reflecting on the ideas that Tyson and Janice brought up too, reflecting on our consistency, variety, progression, moderation, and exercise selection and training. So going out and accessing our fitness and sports instructors, our reconditioning staff, to make sure that our training programs are appropriate. Whether you're training for an Ironman or you just want to keep enjoying your morning walks for as long into life as you possibly can, right? There are training programs and things to consider that you can find support with exercise professionals on every base. Equipment, right? So we might have some more questions on this coming up in the question period, but knowing that maybe orthotics aren't the best for preventing injury in particular, but there are certain things like foot braces, especially in sports where you're moving quickly side to side, that can provide some support and prevent injury. Things like helmets, right? Or mouth guards. These pieces of equipment that we can use during soccer, sports like hockey, that definitely reduces injury. And then finally, something that we are not touching on in this webinar in particular, but a topic that you can look out for in future health promotion webinars is nutrition, right? So how we're fueling our body on a daily basis to maximize our performance and particularly reduce our recovery time so that we're recovering nice and quickly and being able to keep a healthy skeleton and muscular system. So with all of this information in about 45 minutes, does anyone have any strategies for action that they could implement right now? Maybe some ideas that they could do either for themselves or even for their unit, right? Or the members that they may support on their base as well. Any ideas?
Bueller.
Yeah, right? Brainstorming time. I know some people were reflecting a bit back on how they, ramp up their programs. Okay, Ben, my unit should split running groups by ability. Yeah.
Good one.
That's
a very good one. Yeah. Are you in Petawawa too, Ben?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all units should really. Yeah. Aqua jogging versus jogging on land. Yeah. Oh, Ben, it looks like you have a partner in Melanie there to work on that. Awesome. We're already partnering up. Michael.
And Michael, you guys are, BFTA, sending people to Borden for BFTA.
It's perfect.
Yep, another good one.
Yep. So in Borden then too, right? If you are BFTA trained, thinking about taking an IRS course as well, or being able to link up with your health promotion staff there and finding more people and helping to prevent injury. Awesome, really good ideas, and they really don't have to be too complicated because in the end, the reason why we're doing training is to build up our strength, right? It's not to injure ourselves and break us down and take us out of the game for longer. Roughly for every one person who's taken out of work or operations means that 1.4 extra people of effort, right? We can't split a person in half, but it's about 1.4 extra people of effort is needed to replace that position. So it really takes a toll on the people around them and the stress of that individual, right? So those broader reasons for why we need to prevent injury better in the calf. So with that, we do have some extra resources that we like to share in these presentations. So you can take a screenshot of this if that's helpful to you. We have the SIFMAP program, Canada Suicide Hotline, more information on COVID-19, right? So one good resource, you don't have to have many different news sources coming at us at once. Family Information Line, the Sexual Misconduct Response Center, Kids Help Phone, and the ARC line in support of COVID-19. So great resources. Great question time. So it looks like we have one from Jason. Is there anything on DFIT for tips or recovery workouts for common injuries? Who'd like to take that one? Maybe Janet?
I haven't even really used DFIT all that much. Within our department, we don't tend to use it. We just tend to program on our own a little bit. So I can't really, I'd have to explore that a little bit more to see if there is specific programs that have already been laid out for common injuries. My suggestion would be to contact a fitness and sports instructor at your base, or even the reconditioning specialist, or if you're looking for specific workouts for common injuries, they'll be able to help you a little bit more, and it'd be more personalized for you and your injury than it would be if you were just to go through DFIT specifically.
Awesome suggestion. And then Virk is just looking for a clarification on the running progression chart. What is the time limit for that chart? Is it 30 minutes or 60 minutes?
You'd be building up to 30 minutes is what you would be building up to. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend right off the bat starting with 30 minutes, one to one for that 30 minutes. Build up slowly, especially if you are a beginner. Even 10 minutes, 1-to-1 for 10 minutes would be good. You want to be building up to 30 minutes of total running, especially for that once you get to that 1 to 10 bracket.
Great. Hopefully that helps, Burke. Awesome. Thanks. And then Michael's wondering, should I use knee braces if I want to start running outside with my bad knees?
I'll take that one. So Michael, thanks for putting that up there again. That's a tricky one because we have to figure out whether or not the braces that you have are there for stability. So if you've had these prescribed by a doctor or a therapist, then that's absolutely the person who can answer that for you. It'd be very, very tricky. I know some people just like to keep their knees warm. So that would be more like a knee wrap or a knee sleeve versus a knee brace. So, but if you have braces that have been prescribed through physiotherapy or through a physician, then that is a great question to ask them, and they'll let you know whether or not you would want to put the braces on in that situation.
Thanks, Tyson. Yeah, looks like physio. So they would be great.
Yeah, just follow up through physio and see what they think.
And Kelly is wondering, how often should we practice running, like the guide you shared, if we're doing it by ratio? So are you talking how many days, Kelly? Like how often?
Yeah, I think that's what she's looking for. I would say start with about 2 to 3 times a week to start. But even if that's too much, then cut that back. Like, listen to your body and make sure that you're not obviously pushing yourself too hard. But yeah, 2 to 3 days, non-consecutive days would be a good place to start.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, it's tough, especially providing virtual webinars when we have specific questions when it comes to unique injuries or programs. So definitely taking this information and then taking it to your fitness staff too, right? So it's a good place to start. Michael, so until those services are back, what do you suggest to do to manage an issue with obliques and psoas? So how to find services right now?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I would say that if you remember those anti-flexion, anti-extension, those exercises that we talked about in the presentation, if those things don't hurt to do, then you can include that type of general strengthening to manage those types of issues. But when we look at obliques and psoas, that can be it can be pretty tricky and pretty hard to figure out without actually working hands-on. General rules apply. If it hurts, don't do it. If it doesn't hurt and it falls in line with the goals of what your therapy was before that, then do that. But yeah, that would be covering the core exercises stuff. Basic ball massage. I don't generally recommend unless someone has been shown how to do that properly. So that's sort of a maybe. I'll put that as an answer on that one if that helps.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of issues with the obliques and psoas? Like pain, or I get kind of confused with that one as well.
I just assume by issues we mean like pain and weakness.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like we'll just lump them together. pain and or weakness.
Yeah.
Dysfunction.
Yeah.
Too much sitting.
Yeah.
You need to work on stretching through those flexors.
Yeah. And so as far as finding services too, potentially, reach out to your PSP team. They could also try and help you find local resources and potentially set up different calls with local supports where you are, Michael. So don't be afraid to reach out and be creative in how you try and contact your PSP team too. Is a good place to start. So Verk is wondering, how about shin compression sleeves, specifically to prevent shin problems, stress fractures? Are they recommended?
That's going to fall in the same category of all the orthotics and all the other braces. There's just not enough research to support them, to support their use. In general, if you have been wearing shin compression sleeves and they seem to help you, that's fine to keep going ahead and doing that. But they're not a magic prevention tool. They just they may or may not help. So that there certainly isn't a recommendation for it, but I wouldn't say that they're a bad idea either.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason.
Nice setting on the fence type answer.
Yeah. Yeah. What it really comes down to, it's tough, right? Everything is so individual.
It's inconclusive, right? The evidence is just it's all over the map. So
You're welcome, Donna, for the team approach. Yeah, of course. Any other questions as we wrap up? You got about 4 minutes left if you do. Doesn't look like any are coming in, so thank you everyone for joining us. Oh yeah,
there was one last one that just came in.
Oh, no problem, Michael.
Okay, yeah, that was just from his earlier. Okay.
Awesome. Good stuff. So again, yeah, this is a good start to keep injury prevention top of mind. Again, anything specific for your own individual programming or individual injuries are going to have to be, with your healthcare professionals, whether that's physio, reconditioning, or your doctor. But this is great to start that motivation and keep injury prevention top of mind as we all try to stay active in maybe some creative ways or in different ways than we're used to. If you have any questions, we can stay on just a couple minutes after 1 if you just don't want to ask it in front of the larger group. But you can also email us with the emails that we're at the start. So I can go back to that first slide. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Stay safe, stay active.
Yes. Safely active.
Remember to breathe.
Workout time. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, workout time. That's where I'm going next.
I did it right before this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, I can't get back to the first slide. Oh well. I'll write my email down here.
I have access to go through the slides this time.
Oh.
There.
So if you have any questions, I just put my email in the chat. Oh, there you go. Thanks, Janice.
You're welcome.
All right. Looks like we're good. Thanks, you guys. Thought that went
You're
really
welcome.
well.
Yeah.
Yay. Have a good day. We'll
cheers. Talk to you later.
Talk to you soon.
Yeah. Text you soon. Yeah, exactly. Okay.